Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. I hope you can hear me well. Maybe just put OK in the chat, and then I know I can go forward. Yes, perfect. OK. Welcome, and today's subject is, of course, the purchase of a home in the Randstad. Of course, we will see some general information about buying a home in the Netherlands, but we will also zoom in on the Randstad itself and the cities that are part of it. And of course, as you know, we go through the webinar. It will take like 45 minutes, 50 minutes maybe. And then you have the time also to ask some questions. So you can put them already in the chat or keep them just until the Q&A and then pop them in the chat. That is totally fine. And then we will come back to it. Okay, so let's start today and go to the first slides. Maybe always interesting to explain a little bit who we are. So we are VK makelaars and taxateurs. That is because we are a realtor and we are an appraiser. We are also a member of the association of VBO. As you know, there are 3 associations of realtors in the Netherlands, and we are part of the VBO association. We are active since 2019, but we have different people that have a lot more experience in real estate than that. But we started VK Makelaars out of Haarlem in 2019, and now we also opened a new office in Amsterdam quite recently, but also because we had a little demand, a lot of demand over there, I'm sorry. What is important to know is that we are active in the Randstad, and of course we can support you also in the rest of the Netherlands. I come to that a little bit more in detail when we go further to our services. And important to know is I'm not alone, of course. I do this together with 8 colleagues, realtors. Floris of our team is also an appraiser, and then we still have some administration staff, of course, like somebody in-house doing the videos and the pictures, also somebody that can furnish your apartment or your house when you sell it. But in the team itself, there are 8 realtors every day at your disposal. What is important to us, we always call it the rule of the 4 Ps. So that means that we have a personal approach. That means as well, when you speak to one of us and you have like an account manager that is working for you, or you're working with together, of course, as a partnership, then it will always be the same person that you can talk to later on and during the total process. We work proactive, so you don't always need to remind us about things, but we try to come with information to you. You can also reach us day and night to say, of course, when we're sleeping, that is not possible. But for the rest of the time, you can always send us a message or even call us. That is no problem. We are available. And we try to be punctual and precise in everything what we do, because of course during the total process as well, we don't want you to make any mistakes. So being punctual and precise in what we do is quite important. That shows also in our client rating. If you see online on Google, you can see 4.9 out of 5. We are happy with that, but we are happy as well that our clients give us that rating. So that means that we are doing a good job. You can always check on this website as well, but I will share the presentation as well afterwards, so you can check over there. What is important to know is, as I said, we are a realtor. That means we can help you with a purchase. We can also help you with selling your property. We can give rent assistance, or we can do the letting of your portfolio, maybe if you have it. We also do valuation, very important, and also property management. So for all those specific services, you can always count on us. Myself, I'm Philip Albrecht. I'm originally from Belgium, but living now in the Netherlands, and I really like it. In the beautiful city of Haarlem. Worked in Amsterdam before as well. I have a master in law. I did a master in real estate as well. I'm a RICS member, and so on and so on. I have 15 years of experience, in real estate in the Netherlands, but also in an international context. So I know a little bit about everything. Also, if you want to invest, that's one of the topics I can help you with as well. These are my colleagues. I'm not going to give every name separate to you, but you see as well that we speak different languages. so you can always reach us in Dutch, in English, in Spanish, or in French. If you prefer that we speak to you in your own language, that is possible. Why do I show this picture as well is because, yeah, it's a happy picture with the total team, but you see as well on the backfeeds, as we call it, that we are a no-nonsense broker, and that, yeah, maybe freely translated is cut the crap or no bullshit. We try to go forward in what we do, and we try to be direct and transparent in our services. That's a little bit how we work and how we do it. And until now, as you saw, people like it, so we continue in that way. Important for today's webinar, of course, is we are going to look in specific to the market in the Netherlands and then to the Randstad in specific. What we see is that it is not one definition that you can find over there. That's maybe interesting for you to know if sometimes you're going to look a little bit more in detail about all those facts and figures, then you will see that it's not always defined in the same way. So also the numbers can differ a little bit, just that you know. But of course, we are on the northwest of the country, and you have some main cities that are part of it, and that are the four main cities: Amsterdam, The Hague, Utrecht, and Rotterdam. That is clear, and that is also everywhere the same. But also a city like Almere is also part of the Randstad. Is considered to be yeah, some cities that are interconnected in a certain way, not only with public transport, but also that if people move, for example, they come also to the other cities. They see that as an alternative. And of course, you also have some economy going on over there. And so also if companies move or companies start, then they will choose those different cities as alternatives. What we see over there is that there are living approximately 8.3 million people, and that is quite important because in the total of the country we have around 17 million people, 17 plus, but that means that around 45% of all the Dutch people or all the people living in the Netherlands, I need to say it like that, are living in the Randstad. So quite an important location, yeah, we come later to that as well, but you know as well that for real estate as well, the first dogma that is always mentioned is location, location, location. Of course, if you see that a lot of people are living at a certain place, there is a lot of economical activity, yeah, that means as well that it does something with the housing prices as well, of course. We see as well that it's interesting for expats to come to the Netherlands. Most of them will also come to the Randstad, with some exceptions of, for example, Eindhoven, because there we have some IT companies as well over there. We see also some students in Tilburg and Groningen, but a lot of people are coming to the Randstad, and yeah, according to the numbers, also again over there, what is an expat? But it's around 200,000 people that come to the Randstad to live there. And then when we look a little bit more in detail, we see also here a little bit how those different cities compare to each other, to one another. You see, of course, Amsterdam is the biggest one with around 880,000 people living over there. Rotterdam is second with around 650 people, 650,000 people. And maybe if you visited Rotterdam one time or you saw some pictures, you see as well that they are building a lot of skyscrapers over there. So it is likely that also the population of Rotterdam will grow. You see then The Hague as number 3 and Utrecht as number 4. And then you see all the other cities that are part of it as well, with also Haarlem over there at a 6th place. And then you go a little bit further, you have famous cities as well as Leiden, where you also have a lot of students living over there. And then we end with Delft, one of the cities with above 100,000 people living over there. Yeah, always interesting to see what are the most popular cities to live in. Also, where is the most chance to find something, because you have there a lot of housing, of course. Then if we go to the actual topics of the day, we call it the news topics, then we see different things. We see some restrictions for private investors. about taxes, but also self-occupancy legislation that applies. I come to that in a minute if somebody is interested for that. Yeah, more conditions to apply for a mortgage. We come also to mortgages a little bit later in the webinar. Not that I'm a financial expert, I'm a real estate broker, but nevertheless, it's very important. So I'll give you some main topics about it as well. But not only the interest rates are important, we see also that for people that are not in the standard situation of two people having a job and earning money, some people that are divorced or entrepreneurs as well, that it's a little bit more difficult to apply for a mortgage now if you compare to 1 or 2 years ago. You see also less applications for mortgages in Q3 because a lot of people thought that yeah, the interest rates would drop somewhere towards the end of the year. Today we heard that the central bank in Europe is going to increase the interest rates in general. So it is likely that we will not see a drop in the mortgage rate, but rather see an increase coming on, something that we saw already at the end of August, beginning of September. There are less candidates for viewings and there are less offers. That is clear because, of course, if people yeah, have a higher interest rate, then it means that they have a lower amount that they can borrow from the bank if they want to have the same monthly payment. And then, of course, we see that yeah, for the same property that is in the market, we see that there are less candidates, yeah, and also less offers as a result. We come to all those topics a little bit more in detail going forward, so don't run away. But I just want to give you the overview already. We also see that new builds are a lot lower than expected. That has to do with the war in Ukraine, also had to do with Corona before, had to do also with the ship that was blocked at a certain moment. There are a lot of different reasons, also has to do with permits and also CO2 that is in the air and need to be reduced. But the result is the same, is that the new builds coming to the market, they stay behind. And they don't meet expectations. And then we saw as well, one of the headers of the article was that if you are Jan Modal, as they call it, so you earn like around 65,000 euros on a yearly base, then you cannot buy 80% of the houses that are for sale in the Netherlands at the moment. So very important to see that stepping into that market is not always easy. And you saw as well that people that were waiting for prices to drop or interest rates to go down, yeah, that sometimes that was not a good decision. And then we have also the header, and that is important for tonight as well, that they say the Randstad is losing inhabitants. Very important to mention about there that that is only part of the total story. Yeah, what we see indeed in the Netherlands, and that also is partially the result not only but also because of Corona, where you see that a lot of companies allow their people to work in a hybrid way, that they don't need to be in the office all the time. And of course, then you can go to live a little bit further from the place where you're working. So we see that the Randstad is losing some inhabitants, but that doesn't mean that there are less people living over there, because we see also that a lot of people by immigration coming to the country, they still want to live in the Randstad. And as a result, the number of people is also growing over there. Yeah? But it is clear that people living in the Randstad, and we see that a lot also with people that have children, they want to have a little bit of a garden or a little bit of a bigger house, and they move away from the Randstad and go to places where you have, for the same money, a bigger garden, a bigger plot of land, and also a bigger house. Yeah. So that's it for the news. And then I'm going to help you in a short way to the discussion. Do we need to buy or do we need to rent? What is the best idea or solution? Of course, there are always pros and contras in that. If you rent, of course, it is quite flexible. You have low or no maintenance costs. The management as well is for the landlord. The landlord will also insure the property, but of course you are not guaranteed to stay forever. A lot of contracts or temporary contracts with a maximum of 2 years, and then after that period you don't know if the landlord will continue with you or search for another tenant maybe. You also need to take into account, of course, that the rent will be adapted normally on a yearly basis. So as a result, you don't know exactly what you're going to pay for the next couple of years. Of course, you know it today, but going forward, it can be different. And the most important, I believe, negative point then is the fact that if you rent, you don't build up equity. If you buy, of course, you can build up that equity. So that's the very important difference, except or next to the other ones. And it's always possible, of course, when you buy something to adapt everything to your own wishes, where if you rent a property, of course, when you give the property back to the landlord, you need to just put it in the same conditions again as you received it. So you're not able to change everything just the way you wish. The interest rates on a mortgage is also tax deductible in the Netherlands, so that's very interesting when you buy. And it's possible to have that fixed monthly installment. You need to go to the bank, of course, to know exactly what you can pay and what you like to have as an installment as well. But you can have a fixed monthly installment depending on the type of mortgage that you take, and that can be very interesting also for your own costs to schedule them going forward. Of course, you need to pay some maintenance costs, that is clear. You also need to pay some owner taxes, and you have the risk of the value of the property. Of course, the risk of the value of the property, you also have the benefit. When the prices are going up, you will have that overvalue and maybe are able to buy a new property with part of that overvalue and have an extra loan on top of that. But if the market goes down a little bit, then of course you have the risk as well over there. For those figures, I come back to you in a minute, but I'm just going to put this plus and minuses in a little example for you. We have this property. It's a property, let's say, in Amsterdam with a purchase price of 600,000 euros, and it can be rented at 1,900 euros a month. So if we make the comparison there, if you would have a rent at 1,900 euros a month, that is, of course, your cost that you will have. If we take a mortgage at 3.25%, I have to say on today, it is likely that it will be slightly higher, more to 3.5 or 3.7. And we take a house of 600,000 euros over here, then we have a gross monthly payment of 2,611 euros. And of course, you have some benefits, as I explained already. So the net monthly payments will only be 2,031 euros. What we see over here is that just the cost of rent or paying the mortgage, we have, the winner is the rent over here because you pay 131 euros more when you buy the property. Of course, when you build up or you want to build up some equity, you need to buy a place, have a mortgage with that, and then you see that you can build up 1,670 euros on a monthly base. We have that maintenance cost, as explained. You are the owner, so you need to deduct that from the profit that you make. But still, if you count everything together, then you will have a positive balance of 1,039 euros. We took some variables and conditions over here to make the calculation. Feel free to reach out if you want some more details. But what we see over here, that it is beneficial for buying a property. Of course, what is the most beneficial is the fact that you build up some equity over there. Yeah, if you just look at the monthly cost and what you need to pay, then sometimes it can be interesting to rent. But if you look on the long term, then it is always more favorable to buy a property, even when you need to pay a mortgage and interest rate on that. Yeah, so that's buy or rent. If you made up your mind and you say, okay, I want to go to that buying market now, but I need to know something about it as well, then I can give you some numbers already. And this is a clear chart where you can see the housing price index starting in 1995, going to 2022, the second quarter. And for the Q3 numbers, we need to wait a little bit longer, but they will come as well next month. What you see over here, that is very clear. If you see between 1995 and 2022, then prices went up. That is quite clear on the screen. Of course, you always need to take into account inflation, but even that, if you take the corrected numbers, then you will see that the housing prices are going up faster than inflation. What you see as well is that between 2010 and 2015, clearly we had a dip in the market. And that is known by everybody. It started in 2008 with the banking crisis, but then we had a big problem in the Dutch market, also because of the fact that at that time you were able to finance up to 130% of your house. even if intergenerational loans, as they called it. And there were other benefits which made that a lot of people had a very big mortgage. And then at that moment with the banking crisis, it went totally wrong. And between 2010, 2015, the prices dropped significantly. But after that, you see as well that there was a steep increase. And for sure, the last couple of years, in 2020, 2021, yeah, prices went up like crazy, you can say. Important to see that, so you can see at a certain moment the prices can go down. There can always be a little bit of a decrease, but in the end it's always an increase that you see in the market. And if you ask me as well, or what people often ask then when they see this chart, yeah, but are we now at the same point where we will go, where we will see the same dip as in 2010? Then of course you never have a glass bowl, so I cannot give you an answer that is totally with 100% guarantee, but we don't have the same conditions in the banking system and also not the financing of the properties as what we had in 2010. Yeah, so that is a big difference, and therefore even when we would have a little decrease in prices at the moment, nobody expects to have the same repetition as 2010, just for that reason. Also because of the fact that there is a lot less of offer in the market, and that was also different when we look back in time. If we look then to the Dutch real estate market this year in 2022, you can also see here, and this source is CBS, so you can also see over here that you still see the prices going up. What we see, of course, if you see also 5 and 6, and if you also see the difference between the indexes, then we see that the increase is not that steep anymore than it was before. But on today, we have to say that yeah, we don't see the prices going down yet. I say yet because, of course, we are waiting now for Q3 numbers. And I believe that having a holiday in that and also a little bit hesitation in the market of buyers, that at a certain moment we will see the prices at least stabilizing and maybe even going down slightly. If you go a little bit more in detail in those numbers, then you can see that, yeah, we saw of a year-to-year basis in the total of the Netherlands, that is, we saw in Q2 that around 35 or 36,000 houses were sold. That's -1% if you compare to Q2 2021. At an average purchase price of 448,000 euros. And then I'm speaking about existing houses. And the sales period was around 24 days, so still quite fast. If we look then at the new builds, there we see something totally different. In the new builds, we see clearly that there was a decrease with 48%, only 5,000 new builds that were sold in Q2. And at average price of 483,000, it's a little bit higher than with existing houses. I have to say that you cannot always compare new builds and existing one-to-one, but I come to that in a minute as well. But then you have some idea about the numbers of the purchase price. What is important to know is that, yeah, we don't have any info on the sales period, but what is the main reason for new builds to be sold yeah, in a more difficult way? There are two things that are important about that. The delivery dates of a lot of new builds take much longer than expected. Also with some permits, it takes longer than expected, and then people are not that willing to sign already a contract. And the second thing as well is that, yeah, you have material costs that are getting much more expensive due to everything that is happening in the world, of course. And as a result, the developers adapted their contracts in the sense that the prices are not fixed prices of new builds, but are like flexible prices that or take into account the total increase of material costs, or yeah, cap it at a certain percentage. But for sure, when they go above a certain percentage, you need to pay that extra amount of costs as well. Important to know, and you see it has a really important impact on the new build market. If we then go a little bit more in detail in the real estate market figures of Q2 for two main cities where we have our offices, then you see in Amsterdam 3,100 houses were sold. That was 30% more than a quarter before, but 7% less than 1 year before. Average purchase price in Amsterdam around 574,000 euros. That means that you see it here as well, that still the prices are going up. Average price per square meter around 6,700 euros. Always important to see that number as well. And a sales period of around 26 days. So still a short period, a little bit longer than the average in the country. And then I took also the numbers of Haarlem to compare for you. There you see, of course, it's a different market. There were 768 houses that were sold in Haarlem. You always see that the turnover in Haarlem is less prominent than it is in cities as Amsterdam, of course, and it's also sometimes a little bit slower that people move out of their houses over there. Q2 compared to Q1, you see an increase of 40%. It was the same as in 2021. An average purchase price, and that's something funny that you see, is 644,000 in Haarlem compared to 574,000 euros. But if you see then the average price per square meter, you see that in Haarlem it's around 5,800 euros, where in Amsterdam it's 6,700 euros. So of course you need to look at the average purchase price, but you also need always to look at the price per square meter, because there is a difference, of course, if you look at the two cities. And then you see, as I say, there are not always that many houses on the market in Haarlem. So you see that people want to be fast over there. So compared to the average national of 24 and compared to the sales period in Amsterdam of 26, in Haarlem, it was only 20 days that houses were on the market for there. If you want to have some other numbers, I can share them with you as well about Rotterdam, The Hague, or even another city in the Netherlands. Just feel free to reach out to us and then we can help you with the same numbers. What is now important to know is we have those numbers of Q2. We don't have them of Q3 already, so they will come, but we don't have them at the moment. So, but what do we need to do now, and what can we expect in the actual market? What we see that, of course, there is a lack of offer in the market. As I said before, normally new builds, they need to come to the market because in general, maybe as you know, we have a shortage of around 300,000 houses that we need just to meet expectations of everybody that is searching at the moment. So new builds need to come to the market, and that offer is staying behind. And what we see now, because of all those reasons I mentioned already, the deficit is only growing. What we see with existing houses, for sure in Q2, now in Q3 we need to see how that goes, but we see that more people are putting their house, which they own already, on the market, because of the fact that, of course, when they bought a new house, they know what they paid for that, but they also counted on a certain amount of the existing house to finance that purchase, that new purchase. And therefore, some people want to be absolutely sure and put the existing house as soon as possible on the market as well, to have an idea about the financing of savings they can use to buy that new property. So we see that there are more houses coming to the market in the existing market. With the new builds, we see that there is a real problem. What is still important to know is you have a lot of fiscal benefits as well in the Netherlands. You have the transfer tax that is 2% normally, but can be exempted under some conditions if you buy until a certain amount, 400,000, and you are younger than 35. If you buy as a private investor, that's something else. But for private people using it as their domicile, the transfer tax is low or even can be exempted. You also have a tax rebate. That means that the interest rates that you pay yourself as a cost can be deducted from your salary, and then you only get taxed on the net salary that is the result. And also the overvalue of your house is exempted. As I said before, if you have a house, you sell it, then you can use that overvalue for the 100% to buy your new property. So that is very interesting. You also had the Huurbalton. That is not that important to mention over here. It's also something that will not be applicable anymore going forward. But it were all drivers that I mentioned over here of the real estate market and the real estate prices. And for sure, that transfer tax that is low or exempted, the tax rebate and the overvalue that is exempted, they still stay applicable. So important if you want to calculate a little bit your investment and also look in the longer term what it means to you, that is very important to take that into account. Of course, the finance cost is very important. That is very clear. When the mortgage rates were around 1.3%, if you calculated your monthly installment, of course, that was a lot lower than it is today if you pay 3.5% or 3.7%. So for sure, that plays a role. And also buying power of course, plays a role as well. We don't know exactly what inflation or a recession will do on the buying power of the people. What we see is that a lot of people are working and they cannot find a lot of people joining the labor market for some professions. So there is a lot of work to do and there are a lot of jobs. Maybe recession will cut that back a little bit, but just until now, also the reason why the European Central Bank is hiring the interest rates is because there is still a big demand for products. And there is a huge buying power. Of course, it can be that the next couple of months it will slow down a little bit also on that side. And of course, if you have then a mortgage with high interest rates and buying power that is going down, then of course that will have an impact on the prices. So as I said, we don't have a glass ball, but it can be that for sure that financing cost on the short term will have a little bit of an effect on prices, that they stabilize in first instance and maybe even go down a little bit. Material costs, I explained a lot to do with the new build market. And then, of course, also some alternatives. That's why I started as well to rent or to buy. If you're going to look at the rental market, it can be that you say now, yeah, my monthly installments, because of interest rates going up, they are more expensive. That is correct. But also rental prices in the free market often follow the same increase as inflation is doing. Of course, it's kept for a part. It's not totally exactly the same rate that applies over there, but still, if everything is getting more expensive, then also the rental prices will go up. So, of course, if you want to save some money, just renting in the Dutch market is not always a good option or the best option. And then it can still be interesting for that monthly installment just to buy a property. And then always think again at my slide over there where you build on some equity in the long term, and also the slide where you see that even after a dip, the housing market always comes back to a more positive point. Voila, that was my little summary of what are the most important market drivers and some market information. As I said, I cannot give an answer to all of your questions, but I hope that I give some elements that you can use as well or can follow up in the next coming days, weeks, or months to make up your mind. If you then say, okay, I step in that buying process, I'm sorry, and I want really to buy a house, then it is important to know, as I said as well, to see in which kind of property you're interested in. A new build property is not the same as an existing property. If you want to know everything about new build properties, then stay tuned on our social media channels, because going forward, before the end of the year, we will also have a new build webinar. What is important over there is to mention that there is no transfer tax on a new build. There is no appraisal that is necessary when you want a mortgage. They just take the purchase price as the value of the property, with maybe some exceptions with some banks if they really see a big spread with all the houses in that neighborhood, but otherwise you don't need an appraiser. The energy label, of course, is a lot better for new builds, and you have low maintenance costs. That is clear because it's new. Of course, you can also finish totally the way you want it the moment that you buy it. So that's interesting as well. Of course, there are also some negative points. You have a double housing cost. So that's something you need to finance and see how that goes. I put here as well 1 to 2 years delivery time. A lot of projects are shifting more to 2 years than to 1 year, to be honest, depending also on the size of the projects. You need to be able to register in some locations, and for sure in Amsterdam as well, on good locations. if there is a new build project over there, then still a lot of people want to buy over there. And so you need to be able to get on that list to be able to buy a property. And you, of course, you cannot do any viewings because the building is not existing. You need to buy on plan. That gives some difficulties. It is often then advised to take also a technical expert to look at the plans and also the description of those properties with you. But again, if you want to know everything about it, then follow us for the new build webinar. The price is the price. It was not able to discuss on prices. Of course, I see the last couple of weeks and months, as I explained already, new builds are not that sold that easily anymore. So maybe you cannot always negotiate on the price of the properties, but for sure, maybe you can negotiate a little bit on the finishing, maybe to get a better kitchen that was proposed originally, or have the finishing of the walls or the floors or something like that that is included in the price and was not before. So also over there, some things are shifting a little bit. Important to mention, purchase process is different, so keep that in mind. Also, your mortgage offer needs to be different because often it needs to be longer than 6 months of valid before you sign the contract with the notary, the transfer deed. You will have 2 contracts here, a purchase contract and a building contract. Also important to know, sometimes they put it together, but it will be 2 contracts. It can be in 1 document. You have other purchase costs that apply, other payment terms, and also other guarantees. So if you go for a new build, that can be a very good option because of the positive points already mentioned. But then feel free to reach out if you want some assistance or go through the documentation, because it's a little bit different, than what I'm explaining tonight about existing properties. Then the next rule is also very important. And even today, maybe with the market that is changing or shifting a little bit, it is maybe the most important lesson of the night. So I call it the 1, 2, 3. And what is it about? It is the answer to the question, how much do we need to overbid? Do we need to overbid with 10%? I always say that is a very good question. The reply is a little bit longer than only say yes or no. We look at this property. The asking price is 475,000 euros. The value of that property is not always the same as the asking price. In the Netherlands, we don't have a strict rule that says how you need to put the asking price compared to the value. So when we look at this property, our colleague Floris did that, and he said this value is 520,000 euros. That is clear if I look at the references, 520,000 euros. Finally, we really wanted the property. It was a nice location, and we paid 543,250 euros. If you compare then the asking price and the final purchase price, you will say, yeah, that is a big difference. We overpaid with 68,000 euros. We overbid 68,000 euros on the asking price to be able to get that property. If you ask me, I always say, yeah, it doesn't matter, that 68,000, that is not important at all. The only thing that is important to me is the 23,000. The 23,000 is a difference between the value of the property in the market, and the final price that you pay. And why is that important? One point is clear, I believe. You want to, buy a property as close as possible to the value of that property. Of course, if it's possible below, that's better, but at least you don't want to pay more. Unless, of course, in a very competitive market, you say, yeah, but I compared a lot of properties and this one I really like. So here, for example, you say, for this property, really to close the deal, I like to add 23,000 euros above the value, even when I know that on today, that is not the value of the property. You will also be able to finance 520,000, and that 23 will be with your savings. Yeah. So if you look then at overbidding, because that's then the magic word, you can say that you did an overbidding of 14% on this property. If you look more in detail, I think that is not correct. And you also only did overbidding with 4.5% on this property. And that's the way I think you need to look at that specific house and those specific values. What is now important in the market to come is the fact that why were asking prices always put that low by selling agents? because they knew there were a lot of people in the market, and they saw as well that if they put the asking price a little bit lower, they even had more people coming to the property. And what they saw as well, that if they put the asking price that low and more people coming to the property, that they sold it at even a higher price, because everybody started overbidding, of course, because money was cheap. Remember that 1.5%, something like that. So everybody started overbidding, and then even putting extra savings on top. And it was also in an upgoing market, so everybody knew if I pay now too much, then in 2, 3, 4, 5 months, yeah, I recuperate that money already in the value of the property. What we see on today, of course, is that the market is slowing down a little bit. So what we see as well, that there are not that many people coming to the viewings, not that many people making an offer, and also people tend not to overbid that much anymore as they did before. What is then the result, of course, that the selling agents or the sellers we do is often that they put the asking price a little bit closer to the value that they expect of the house. So they will not put the asking price at 475,000. They will put it closer to 520,000. Yeah. Of course, if you are going to overbid on 520,000 with that same 70,000 or 68,000 than you did before, then you pay a lot too much. That is clear. If you follow the 1, 2, 3 rule, as I just explained, and just keep your 520,000 as the value, and starting from there, how much you like to overbid, yes or no, then of course you don't make any mistake. So going forward, very important to know exactly that value of that house in that market. And for that, I believe sometimes it can be very interesting to use an expert and not to make a mistake to start calculating yourself and paying in the end maybe too much for that property, where of course in the market, if it slows down a little bit, it will take a lot longer if you overpay on that property. Yeah, so that's a 1, 2, 3 rule, very important. I hope that you remember it, and otherwise, yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd like to explain it again to you if you are interested. The next thing that I want to point out as well, because we're looking at the Randstad and we see as well that there are a lot of investors looking at those places. We saw as well that yeah, investors, of course, they slow down sometimes at the possibilities of starters in the market to buy the cheapest apartments, because investors paid a little bit more and then rented out those places. That's why the government decided to put a general law in the Netherlands, where every municipality can decide for investors that they need to follow some rules. The investment protection rule, or the self-occupancy that applies on that. It means that on today, around 60% of the municipalities used the possibility. And they say that if you want to invest in their city, then it is not possible for a house. If we look, for example, at Amsterdam, for a house with a WZ value below 512,000 in 2021, you cannot just rent it out from day one. You need to live in that property at least for 4 years yourself. Yeah, you see also some other cities that apply. It is important to take into account, if you also want to rent out that property, you also need to look at your mortgage, of course, because it's another type of mortgage as well. But also in some cities, it is not possible. What is very important is that those rules are not exactly the same in every city. It is a self-occupancy, they call it, but some cities say it's for the total city. Other cities say, like Rotterdam, it's in certain neighborhoods. Sometimes they have a certain period that applies, like 4 years in Amsterdam. In other cities, they have other periods, or yeah, they make it just a general rule, and maybe some exceptions that exist in one city and not in the other. So always important, if you go to a certain market, then double check on that, because of course, if you want to rent it out as well, then that is important to know. Okay, we looked at the market, we looked at the drivers, we looked at some important information if you step into that process, but I believe as well that you're interested to see how the purchase process then goes from A to Z when you buy a property in the Netherlands. What is important is the first step, and even there we are not totally involved, that is financial advice. You can see that on the screen. We can help you and refer you to some of our partners that are very good at financial advice, and also financial advice for expats, because sometimes your personal file is a little bit different. That is the first step, always. You need to know your budget before you go to the market. Still, the market is slowing down, but you see as well that in some cases, and for sure for nice properties, it still goes quite fast, I have to say. And before you like to make an offer, you always want to be sure that if the offer is accepted, that you can go forward with the purchase. So get financial advice, then you start searching for properties. Of course, we can help you with that, but you can also do that yourself on some interesting websites. Funda.nl, everybody knows, and there are some similar websites like that. But of course, we can help you as well with some offers that we receive in our network and that we can share with you as well, of course. If you find a property that you like, of course, you go to the viewing. We can come together with you. And then what is very important, I think this is one of the most important steps in the total process, is that you do a due diligence check when you buy a property. A due diligence check on all the documents that you receive from the selling agent. And there you will find some information about the legal status of the building or the property, about technical issues, about financial issues. Also, most of the time you will receive like a questionnaire from the seller, and there you find a lot of information about the building. In that sense, you cannot say afterwards you were not informed. If you receive that information, then that is part of the purchase, of course, and that is information you should check yourself and you're aware of. The second step over there is, and that's something we do together, of course, is the estimation of the value. And that is where we are going to look at references, properties that were sold recently with a maximum of 2 years. We try, but if you can find them closer, that's better. And then based on that, we can tell you what is somewhere the estimation of the value of that property, something which the appraiser will do as well for you. But of course, the thing is that the experts, as you can see, it will only come after the offer that you make and not upfront. So to make that offer, the estimation of the value, you need to do it yourself, or you can use your buying manager to assist you with that. And then we make the offer. I come to that in a minute, how we do that together and to make it as good as possible to make the best offer. When your offer is accepted, then we have 2 experts coming in. Of course, if they are part of your offer, that's the technical expert to do the technical expertise. And as I said, the appraiser to make the appraisal report, which you will need for your mortgage, of course. And after that, we can sign the purchase contract. When you sign the purchase contract, the seller cannot just back out anymore. You still have a cooling off period of 3 days. That is interesting because in that time, you can still cancel the contract and you don't need to pay any penalty. After those 3 days, you will need to pay a penalty, and in the market that is normal, that is 10%, with the exception of the fact that you have a financial clause, because at that moment you can still cancel the contract based on that financial clause if you have the proof of your mortgage or your bank, of course. And then we hope that everything goes well. You have your mortgage approved, you pay the deposit to the notary, and then you will receive the final settlement of the notary. The final settlement is, it's easy. It's the purchase price, of course. It's all the costs that you need to pay. I come to that in detail as well in a minute. And then deducted from that, the deposit and maybe also the mortgage that you have. And the balance, of course, you will need to pay with your own savings. All those transfers will be done in the account of the notary, and the notary then will pay those amounts to the seller. The notary is the final step. You see, just before we go to the notary to sign the transfer deed, we have an inspection. That inspection is not totally the same as a technical inspection. The final inspection is just, we go through the house, we see that everything works. We also see how installations work, and you get some information from the seller at that moment in time. You try the keys, you try the warm water, and so on and so on. And of course, you hope that still the house is intact at the same moment as you visited before. We had one time that still the seller decided to make an open kitchen, and took one wall away in the kitchen. That was not totally what was expected, but it was good because our buyer liked it and even wanted to do the same. So that was a good thing. But those things you can double check, of course, during that inspection. And then you go to the notary, you sign the transfer deed, and at that moment, you will receive the keys of the property as well, and you can use the property. There is still one element I like to mention, that is the liability of the seller. Within a period of around 2 months after the signing of the transfer deed, it is still likely that if something happens, that the seller will held liable for that. One of those things that you see a lot of times is there was, for example, fungus in the basement or on the floor and at the crawling space of the house. If you mention that within 2 months, then it is likely the judge will say, yeah, it's clear the seller needed to know because he cannot come just one day on another. If you wait too long, then it is possible as well that the judge will say, yeah, but we don't know exactly when it started because you waited like 6 months, and in the meantime a lot can happen. So maybe the seller was not aware of it and it only happened after you bought the property. So main tip that I give you over here: when you see something in the property, take action immediately. Send a letter of default maybe to the seller, take a lawyer, or go to the judge when it's really necessary. Let's hope it's not necessary if we do a good homework already as well with the due diligence, also with the technical expertise. Then it is unlikely we will need to go that far, but I just give it for you as information. And then, of course, you want to know how long it takes to go through the total process. I can give you some estimations, but of course, it's not for everybody the same. It depends a little bit. The first tip already, how long does it take before you like a property and you find that as well online? That is something to be defined, of course. Then we have the viewings and then making the offer. I put here 1 to 3 days. For sure, when you have a deadline, it is likely that it is 1 until 3 days. I have to say as well on today with properties that stay a little bit longer in the market or are not like totally finished, there is still some work to do or something is a little bit strange at the property. We still we see now that there is not always a fixed deadline, and it can take a little bit longer even before you make your offer. Yeah, so that differs a little bit from city to city, location to location, and also from property to property. What we see as well is that you have the offer then that is accepted, and then you sign a purchase contract. Normally that is done within 2 weeks. It can be a little bit faster as well, but a lot of times you will take your time to do the expertises first and then sign the purchase contract. You have, of course, the mortgage that needs to be approved. I put here 6 weeks. What is important to know over there is that 6 weeks somewhere is the maximum. And what we see a lot of times is that if you go to a bank, they need at least 2 to 4 weeks to approve your mortgage. If you go to a mortgage advisor, they will not only go to one bank, but different banks. But we see as well that they have another line to say with the decision makers in the banks. And the administration goes faster. So that means that often they can come back to you within even sometimes 3 days until 2 weeks. Yeah. So if you want to have a fast decision on your mortgage application, then often it is interesting to take a mortgage advisor. It will cost maybe a little bit more, but then you know faster if your mortgage is approved, yes or no. And then after that, 1 week to pay the deposit to the notary, as I said. Then, of course, you will receive the settlement. It will take around 2 weeks. I'm sorry, I went a little bit fast. It will take around 2 weeks then for the notary as well to prepare everything for the transfer deed. Of course, the transfer deed of the transfer moment is also something that you agree on making your offer. And it can be within 2 weeks, but it also can be like on today, I heard with one of the colleagues that it will take longer than 9 months. That is exceptional, but it can happen. The only thing you need to double check over there is that your mortgage stays valid for that long period, because normally a mortgage is only valid for a period of 6 months. So important to take that into account. As I said before, making an offer, we do that together with you. And of course, you try to be successful. 3 main topics over there. One is the budget. That's a priority. I said it before, talk to your bank or your mortgage advisor, but you need to know your budget before you start the purchase process, because otherwise it's very difficult to make a good offer if you don't know what exactly is the amount that you can spend. Do your homework. That's something I said as well. And you can ask us to do that, or otherwise you need to do it yourself. do the due diligence, also look at the value of references. It is very important, those two things. And of course, a lot of documents are in Dutch. That's something to take into account. Or you ask us to do this, or your finance advisor, or maybe your lawyer or somebody else, but it's a very important element of the process. And then, of course, you need to make a good offer. And a good offer is quite easy, but of course, it's all part of the total exercise, of course. You need to define the price. We spoke about that already. It's about value, of course, and what you want to pay above that value or not. It are the conditions that apply. It can be the financial condition, the technical condition, or some other conditions you like to include over there. Maybe you want to take over some furniture. That's possible. What is the delivery date, and so on and so on. Important to put a personal touch in there. Not if you're the only one making an offer, of course, then they will look at you. But if you are like with more than one party making an offer and you're close, then that personal touch for sure can make the difference. We saw that before. And some supportive information. Also on today, it's not always the highest price that wins the offer. It's the most secure offer often that is taken by the seller. And that means that if you have some information about discussions you had with your financial advisor or with your bank, then add them as well to the offer, because it will only make it more secure and as such a stronger offer. And then for you to know as well, if you buy that property and you go forward, you will need to pay some costs, of course. The purchase price, that is clear, but you also need to pay some purchase costs, as they are called. Some experts, I said it already, your mortgage advisor, but also your bank will often ask you for an administration fee. Of course, if you use the realtor or a buying agent, you will need to pay him as well. The technical expert, when it's part of your offer that you make, you will need to pay that as well. And the appraiser, of course, to have the appraisal report that is necessary for your application for your mortgage. The notary, that's something you cannot avoid as well. You will need to sign the transfer deed over there. You will need to sign the mortgage deed over there as well. And the notary will also ask you, if you are not fluent in Dutch, that you use a translator at the moment that you go to sign with him. What do you need to expect from all those purchase costs together? It's around 3 to 4% of the purchase price. And on top of that, also the transfer tax. Yeah. Transfer tax normally was 2% until unless you're exempted. So you can count around 5 to 6% of the purchase price. That will be the purchase costs, as they call it, extra to your purchase price. What is important over there is that a lot of costs that are related to financing of your property, they're also tax deductible. So always double check on that, but the notary will normally mention that as well in his final note. So you know exactly which amounts you can put in your fiscal in your fiscal administration as well, and to be able to deduct it from the taxes you need to pay. If you want to make us a certain calculation at a certain moment, then feel free to ask us, because we can split all of those costs in specific. I have to say as well that it is like that, for example, a mortgage advisor, it depends a little bit on the company you're using, of course. A realtor, it depends also on the company. Some have a fixed cost, some work with a percentage. The technical expert, often it's almost the same in every situation. That will be a cost around 430 euros, something like that. An appraiser, it will be different from city to city. If you work in Amsterdam, it will be around 750 euros. If you have an apartment or you have a renovation that you need to do, it will also be a little bit more expensive. If you go to some other cities, even that 750 doesn't apply, and you will only pay around 650 euros. That is possible as well. Yeah, always good to compare some different parties, of course, or to ask your buying manager to help you with that. And the same applies with notaries. You have also different fees that apply over there, depending on the city and also on the service level of the notary. But I have to say as well that for some of them, it's more difficult to provide you with all communication in English. For other, it's a little bit more easy to do that, but then sometimes the cost is a little bit higher. Yeah? And maybe important to know is that outside of Amsterdam, the selling agent will draft the purchase contract. So you don't need to pay for that. It's the selling agent who will do that. If you buy in Amsterdam and it has to do a lot with leasehold that applies over there, then the notary will draft the purchase contract. It's a little cost you need to pay, but yeah, it's a common practice. So everybody needs to do that if you buy a property in Amsterdam. And then, as I said before, we were also going to speak a little bit about the financing part. As I said before, know your budget and also speak to your financial expert. I will give you some information, but of course, we are not a mortgage advisor. When you purchase a property, of course, you need to know which is the price you can finance. At that moment as well, if you look at properties where you need to do some work, also ask already for renovation options. That will often not be like a normal mortgage, but it will be called like a depot. And that means that there is an amount that is blocked in an account with the bank. And the moment that you do some works, you receive invoices, of course, of the suppliers. You will send those invoices to the bank, and they will pay then those invoices paid by that depot they have in their accounts. Before the search, that's important, as I said. Before making the offer, that's also interesting for sure in today's market where conditions can change day by day or week by week. And also always look of that validity period of your mortgage. As I said, it is different for existing market and new builds, but also take into account that if you have a transfer date that is further than 6 months, then also you need to double check on that. So all those tips, I give them for free on today, but keep them in mind because they're quite important. And then, of course, we came to that already. This is a little bit the historical scheme about interest rates on 10 and 5-year fixed. You see as well that, yeah, of course, if you look at the 80s, we had interest rates around 8%. And even in the 90s, a little bit higher. If you see then on today's rates, we are still at a low interest rate. Even 3.5% is not dramatically. The only thing we see is that it's growing now towards 4%, and that between 4 and 5%, it is expected that if we go further above that 4%, 4.5% towards 5%, that it will have a little bit of downwards effect on purchase prices. It's not me that is telling that, but it is a professor, a Dutch professor, that made his calculations on that. And if he says if the interest rate is above 4.5 direction 5%, then it is likely we see a slight decrease in the prices of the existing houses. Of course, that's always mentioned on a short term. In the long term, we need to see what happens based on all the elements that I gave you before. What you see over here is one of the mortgage advisors that always makes some nice graphs about it, and I like to use them because they are quite clear. You see, of course, that if interest rates will differ always on the period that you fix your monthly installments, and also the period of time, of course, that you take the mortgage. But you see as well that or interest rates went up quite fast at a certain moment since beginning of this year, and that you see as well that in the summertime they seem to go down a little bit again. That was end of July, beginning of August, and then it was expected in September even that they were going down a little bit more, but that's not what is happening. You see that since end of August, beginning of September, interest rates are going up a little bit more, and as I said, the decision of today of the European Central Bank will have as a result that for sure the interest rates will not go down immediately, and that in the short term they will go up. Of course, what will happen in the long term, that is not clear on today. That's something to follow. if you take a mortgage and you can apply for NHG, that can be interesting as well. NHG is like an insurance for when you cannot pay back your mortgage anymore. It is also a mean where you have the possibility to have a lower interest rate when you buy a property. It's called National Mortgage Guarantee, if you translate a little bit. So it's an insurance to pay off your mortgage. It's also reduction on interest rates. You can even have more than 100% if you do energy improvements. Of course, there are some conditions that apply over here, and it's also related to the purchase price of the property you're looking at. If you really want to go forward with that, always ask your financial advisor. That is important. But often it is interesting to go forward if you can apply for it. The only thing you need to take into account is that it comes also with a cost. So when you apply for that, the moment that you buy the property, you will also need to pay a cost of 6% of the mortgage that you take to buy that property. So discuss in detail with your mortgage advisor, but if you can meet the conditions, then often it is interesting to have a look at it. NHG, it's called, so take that with you as well. And then I come almost to the end of our presentation. I also like to give you just an overview of what we can do for you, of course. Our services are a little bit defined in packages. I try to do it to give you a clear overview. You can say, okay, I want to have like an all-in package where, of course, we follow you through the total process or assist you in the total process. And we support you with the search, we come to the viewings, and we do everything until the moment that you sign the transfer deed with the notary. Then we will be there together with you as well. Of course, for that all in, we charge a certain fee. It depends a little bit because we work as free independents together with VK. So it depends a little bit who you're talking to, but it will be around 4,500 euros, I'm sorry, for the all-in package. Except for the cost of the experts, of course, that's something that is not included that you need to take into account to pay that extra. We can also offer you the full service. What is the difference with the all-in is that you will do the search of the houses yourself over here. You have the Fundas and all those other websites, and you say that's enough for me. I can look myself. But of course, I want you to come to the viewings because that's important to have that benchmark. And I also want you to help me with the rest of the process, of course. That's very clear. That's also the most popular package that we have. Fee over there, take into account, it will be around 4,000 euros. Also over there, of course, without the cost of the experts, that is extra to that. Yeah, of course, over here, we will focus on the support with you from the moment that you go to the viewing until you are with the notary again. And then you have also some people that say, yeah, everything is okay, but I don't want to pay that much for assistance, and I can do a lot myself. Even the viewings, I bought some properties before. I don't need your help with that. I can do that myself. But of course, the due diligence and the valuation of that property before I make the offer, and then also to see that legally everything is okay. I want your help and your assistance over there. There we have also a basic service. It will be around a price of 2,500 euros, and also the cost of the experts, of course, you need to count extra to that. The difference over here is we will help you, and we will also look at the transfer deed, even do a video call with you if you want to go through the document, but we will not be with the notary itself when you sign the final transfer deed. So this is a little bit different, of course. Since we don't have to do the viewings over here, this we can all do on distance, to say, and we can help you not only in the Randstad, we can help you all over the Netherlands. That's clear, because we can do everything from this distance. What I need to say as well is that what is important in the Netherlands, we have a lot of data on everything, also on housing prices. There is a big database where we can find all those numbers. So even when we are not present in a certain street or a certain city, if you want us to help you with making somewhere an estimation on the value, that is no problem at all. As an appraiser, you can only do an appraisal within 10 kilometers around your registered office. But just over here, making that estimation together with you and not having a final report, that is something we can do for the total of the Netherlands, no problem at all. Yeah. That was my part for today. I hope it was quite clear to you. If you have some questions, you can always pop them in the chat now. I will give you some minutes to put it in. For the rest, I just show you here my contact details, but you will have received them before as well, of course. And you can always contact me on the number that you see or send me a little email. Or also, of course, if you want to speak with some of my colleagues, that is possible as well. And then I see some questions in the chat. It's more a practical one. Will I share the presentation by email? Yes, I will. So you will receive the recording if everything went well, and you will receive that by email for sure. No questions anymore for today. Everything was clear. I see it was informative, so that's always good to read. Okay, if everything was clear, then I'm going to wish you all a very good evening. If you still have some questions, of course, feel free to reach out to us. As I said, you can find us on the contact details that we shared with you. Feel free as well, if we don't work together yet, but you still have a specific question and you just want some information about it, then just take your phone, give us a short call, and then we discuss immediately. We are happy to help you with that. That is no problem at all. Perfect. Wish you a good night for now, and good luck as well. I hope, of course, to see some of you again later and help you going forward. Take care and speak to you later. Bye-bye.